Good evening. This is Dale Lamb with Gardner Webb University. This is Mels 605, summer 2016. I sent out the invitation about 10 minutes ago. I haven't had anybody join me online yet, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and get started. It's about 7:05 on Wednesday night. We are up to Zoom session 4, week 4 of our summer class of 10 weeks. Please remember a couple of housekeeping things. Please remember that we have 10 sessions, but we will not have a session the week of July 4th. We will finish the last week of July, regardless, even though we won't have a session the week of the 4th. Congratulations to Gloria and George, 2 students in our class who have completed their discussion boards and all their turn-ins for this semester. The rest of you, that should serve as a sort of incentive to keep on working. It can be done. Everybody's pretty much on pace. I have one that's not, but I've talked with her individually, and so she's doing fine. There's not really a pace as long as you, it's just a reminder. I don't do weekly turn-ins. As long as you get through by the end of July, you're okay with me. Just make sure that you keep your internship supervisor happy with your task string turn-ins. And please remember that those are due shortly after July 4th, so make sure that you adhere to that turn-in schedule and that you understand that if you don't get your work in, I believe the date is July 14th. For some reason that sticks in my head. It could be the turn-in date. It could be because I'm old and that's my birthday. That's the only date I remember in July. But I believe the turn-in date is July 14th. So please make sure that you have all your work in task string by then. For me, just make sure you have all your work in Blackboard by the end of July. And we're all good to go for that. Tonight's Zoom sessions are centered around job readiness. That was the work that supported in our weekly schedule. Let's look at our weekly schedule. I was having trouble earlier getting this to open. Let's see if it's doing better now. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're up to week 4, the 6th through the 10th of June. Effective leadership, collaborative behavior, situational leadership, and readiness were the topics. And I want to speak some about situational leadership tonight, but more so the readiness component part of that. The 3 discussion boards that you had to choose from this week are boards 9, 10, and 11. In terms of your evidence artifact work, this is the week to upload CAP-E and task string for comments, and your final evidence narrative and discussion board for peer review. You should be closing out the CAP at this time. If you have other things that you've not done, please make sure you get those done too. So let's talk a little bit tonight. Well, hello there, Jennifer. How are you? Jennifer, can you hear me? I can see you. Hey, do you have your sound turned off? I think I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, now we're good. Okay, welcome. Any questions you have before I get launched into job readiness tonight?
No, I don't. I appreciate you looking over my resume from last week, and as well as my cover letter.
Right? Very good. You should be ready to start interviewing for jobs here pretty quickly.
Yeah, they're thinking that they'll open up, at least in my county, on July the 1st.
Yes, you need to have everything, and that's part of what I'm going to talk about tonight is some readiness things, not only looking at potential employees if you're an administrator, but also people looking at you as a potential administrator. So I have a good many materials under Zoom session 10 about interviewing, the types of questions that you'll get from different kinds of interviews. Tonight is more of a general idea of the ancillary things that go along with interviewing for jobs.
Great.
So I'll go ahead and launch on into that then. All right. So on our job readiness quiz, the first thing that these are things, think of these in materials I covered tonight. Think of these again in two different ways. Think of them from your own perspective in applying for a job as an assistant principal. But think of them also as a leader, a principal, or an assistant principal looking for employees. So here's kind of the things that matter. I know how to create an effective resume. Jennifer, it's perfect. That's the first thing. I mean, have somebody review your resume that has hired people and knows what they're looking for. And you need to know what on the other side of that coin is you need to know what you're looking for when you're looking to hire people. One of the things that I always make sure is that there are no gaps. No gaps in education, no gaps in work service. Even if you were a stay-at-home mom or even if you worked at Burger King, employers want to know that. Gaps in resumes scare us. We don't know where you were during that time, So make sure there's an effective resume. An effective resume very quickly conveys your education since high school and your work experience since high school. We need to know those things. And you can elaborate a little bit, but make sure it's not more than 2 pages. Your cover letter is kind of designed for each particular job that you're applying for. Your resume stays pretty much the same. Now, the third and last page I consider a cover page, 2 pages of resume, and then 1 page of reference. Make sure you have and you should have the same set of references no matter what job that you're applying for. It should be a complete set of references. And that's an effective resume. An effective resume is short and to the point, and it answers any questions that people have about your history and background. I understand the do's and don'ts of dressing professionally. This is not exactly on topic, but I always think about when I was a high school principal, I had a young man who wore a dress on a regular basis. He was transgender. We didn't have a problem with him wearing the dress. The problem was he wore the dress too short, and the girls were mad that they should be able to wear the dress as short as he did. Now, the point there is it's okay to wear fashionable clothes. It's okay to things, but not the clothes that you wear to the club. The do's and don'ts of dressing professionally. You don't have to wear a suit every day, but you should wear one to interview. If you're a gentleman, you should wear a suit. Ladies, pantsuit, skirt suit, a jacket. You should have a suit on also when you go to interview. Even though you may not wear that every day in your job, you should wear it to your interview. I know how to properly ask for and submit job applications. Most of that's done online now, and the one thing that I hear constantly is follow the directions. If it says to do A, B, and C online to apply for a job, do A, B, and C. Don't do A and think about B, and then don't do it, but do C, and do them in the order and it's important too, do them in the order that they ask you for them. I spoke to somebody here in CMS not long ago and said the biggest problem with people getting into the assistant principal applicant pool here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, I'm here in lovely Charlotte this evening at Gardner Webb's campus here. The biggest problem is folks don't follow directions, and they make the directions very detailed to see that's part of the process to see if you can follow detailed directions. So make sure that you, in submitting a job application, that you do those things, and be honest. Just before I retired, when I was in the central office, I got a call from a fellow I'd gone to college with, and you can imagine how long that was. I was ready to retire. And he asked me to find out why his daughter couldn't get through the application process. Well, it was very simple. She didn't fill out all the parts and pieces. And the reason why she didn't fill out all the parts and pieces, she had things in her background that she didn't want the district to know. Well, and so she felt like that if she didn't want to lie, and so she just didn't fill them out. Well, if you don't fill them out, that's the reason why we think maybe sometimes folks don't fill them out. So don't leave anything left. Make sure that you get all the pieces and parts. You do them in the correct order and the correct way that they want them. I have the tools to develop a powerful 30-second elevator speech. The 30-second elevator speech basically is what you believe about the business. The beliefs that you hold to your heart that you will never change, that like all children can learn, that effective leaders can make a difference, that working with children or working for children through adults is a higher calling, any of those kinds of things. But it shouldn't last but more than 30 seconds. After that, it becomes a sermon. You just want to be able, to state your beliefs, what your bedrock foundation beliefs are in this business in 30 seconds. I know the answers employers want when they ask interview questions. Well, as I said, later on in one of our Zoom sessions, I'm going to go over those questions and the answers that they expect. All right. Look, employers are looking for workers that don't bother them by asking a lot of questions. That is obviously false, but don't come in with a list of 40 questions to a job interview. And I've had people who did that. They came in with an entire list of questions. Remember who's being interviewed here. You should have done your homework. Don't ever interview for a job you're not willing to take. If you know going in, the worst possible thing that you could say is I don't really want to work here. I'm just interviewing for the experience. That's not the principal's role to give you experience. That's insulting to them. You're basically going in to get to answer the questions or learn what the questions are, so that you can, when you interview at the place you actually want to work, you'll know what to answer. That's not the way this works. Ask questions, but make sure that it doesn't appear that you're asking questions to take notes to go to another job interview someplace else. And please don't say, I don't want to work here. Now, sometimes I've had people come in and interview who have concerns about the distance of the school from their home. The school's not going to move. It's in the same place it was yesterday, and it will be tomorrow, unless we have a, Wizard of Oz tornado come through. It's going to be in the same place. If it's too far from your home, don't go interview. Don't interview just for the experience. That's not a good thing to do. Word will get out, and you'll get blacklisted in the district if you go to every interview in these places where you wouldn't work. During an interview, an employer wants to find out if you would be easy to get along with. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the things, and I have a document in the big interviewing session that I'll do later, and that's one of the things that it talks about. That's 10 things to know about your interviewer. That's probably number one. We want to know what you're going to be like to work with. And if you come in with a million questions or a million opinions, that won't go well. The best way to prepare for an interview is just wing it without practicing first. Obviously, that's incorrect. But hopefully we'll give you enough material in the later session that you'll know what to expect when you go in. You can kind of practice those things. When turning in applications, now most of the time applications are done online, but if you do happen to do a paper one, or you have to take your medical records by, or your health certificate, sometimes there are paper things that you have to do to complete your application. If you do that, make sure you look professional when you go in and turn that in. You could be fired from a job if you do not show up exactly on time just once. No, that's not correct in North Carolina, even though we don't have the union rights here. It is a right to work state. You do have to be given written notice the first time. You could be fired the second time, though. Once I create a resume, I can use the same one to apply for any job. No, you can use the two-page heart of your resume, which has your work experience and your education. Your cover letter should change for each job. Your references should be pretty much standard. Okay. Which of these items belong in a job search portfolio? Your resume, your references. Sometimes folks do a pocket resume, which is a one-pager, but not really. Really what you need is your resume and your references. You should have your job search logs and your copies of job descriptions for the jobs you've applied for. You should keep records, but when you walk in, what you need is your resume, including your references. You also, obviously you need thank you cards for later on, but you also need a two-page evidence summary of your past string portfolio. I will share that with you later, how to write a two-page summary. And that is your portfolio. That's one of those things that you need to take to a potential employer if you get a principal interview, is a synopsis of what you did in your 6 evidence artifacts. If your car breaks down, it's possible you might be late for work or for the interview. I always call them. When dressing for an interview, it's a good idea to dress in a conservative, classy outfit that your grandmother would like. If you don't fully understand how to do something your supervisor tells you to do, if they ask you that, ask your supervisor to explain it one more time. If they ask you a question in an interview you don't understand, ask them to rephrase it. Okay, and these things are good ideas, and not only on the job, but when you're looking for, don't chew gum or food. Don't take your phone in with you. None of that's a good idea. No phones, no gum, no chatter. Never use profanity. Primary purpose. All right. The primary purpose of a resume is to effectively highlight your skills so employer want to interview you. What days are you available to work? That I like that because one of the things that I often talk about interviewing is make sure that you talk honestly with a potential employer about the hours that you can work. I want to access that one now. I will go here. I'm going to do my top 10 for job interviews. And this, again, applies to both sides of the table kind of thing. Let's see. Give me just one second. As I said, I was having problems with Microsoft earlier this evening. I had to shut down and kind of start again. Oh, please don't do that to me. No, I always have the most problem during this class. In my other class tomorrow night, I never have a problem. Well, it always works.
Yeah.
The problem, I think, is I always record this one from here in Charlotte, and I go home and I have an office there, and I record the other one. I seem to have a lot less problem in my office than I do here. I really don't understand that. Restart the program. And my screen share is being paused. Why do I have so much problem with the internet here and Blackboard here? All right, let's see what we got now. Okay. All right. I think, here we go. This. All right. We'll just go around the problem. All right. Here's my top 10 for job interviews, dress for success. We've already talked about. Take a 2-page evidence summary that you can leave with your interview and be able to refer to your activities without reading. Now, that should not be attached to your resume. That should be separate from your resume. I have a copy of that one, I think, in Zoom session 10. But you can look at that 2-page evidence summary where you summarize your 6 evidences. That would be your portfolio, the work that you've done. Research both the school and administration. Look at the state report card and the teacher working conditions survey. Know the backgrounds of all the administrative team. That's kind of self-evident. You should be able to speak to their population. It's also important to do those things in terms of, do you really want to work there? Know what you don't know: EVOS, Power School, Power Source, RTI, PBIS, and Finance. Be able to speak instruction in the bottom line, student achievement. When I say know what you don't know, you only know EVOS, Power School, Power Source, RTI, PBIS, and School Finance from the teacher side of the desk. You won't really be able to learn a lot of those other things until you're sitting on the other side, but that's one of the reasons why we're having you do some of the things that we have you do during your internship hours, is to try to learn those things and see them from the administrative side. The Power School and Power Source portals are completely different for administrators and teachers, but you should know what their functions are and be able to speak to those functions. Get one of your administrators to show you those things during your internship. Have a humorous anecdote about how you were able to turn a negative into a positive. I can't tell you how many references I fill out, and they always want to know about a time when you faced a challenging situation or a negative situation and what you did. So it's always good to have one of those prepared, how you turn a negative into a positive, a tough situation into a success. Be prepared to discuss hours and responsibilities honestly. I visited a school here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. had some of my clinical interns, and I got there in September, and I saw the new faculty on the board, and I recognized the name and face, the picture of a lady that I had trained when she was an intern, and I was so happy. And I went in, and I spoke to the principal, and I asked about her, and she said, "Oh, she's no longer here. She lasted less than a month." And I said, she said, she couldn't work the hours. It was a late start elementary school that didn't start until 9:30 because they had a head start on the same campus, and they didn't get out until 4:30, and teachers couldn't leave until 4:45. And shortly after getting the job, the new AP informed the principal that she had to leave every day at 4 o'clock to go pick up her children. And so they made sure that she was able to do that. She could actually leave anytime she wanted to because she didn't work for them anymore. Those things happen. You need to be able to speak honestly about, I can work these times or these days or these hours. Don't go in and say I can be there all the time every day, and then you can't. Don't discuss salary, experience, steps, national board pay, any of that stuff with the principal when you go into interview. The principal doesn't have a thing in the world to do with any of that stuff. What you need to know is that if you move to the administrative assistant principal pay scale, even if it's less than what you're making currently now as a teacher because of national boards, that you will be held harmless. What that means is you won't make less. You may not get a raise, but you won't make less. That's all you need to know. You can talk money specifics once you've got the job, but do not do that in the initial interview. Don't engage in gossip or negative talk. Don't interview for a job you wouldn't take just for the experience. This is the waste of the interviewer's time and word will spread, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Make sure that you don't do that. Now, you can look at these things, same things. This is also kind of a checklist when you're interviewing people. These are the unwritten things, the stuff that matters. And then we'll do the top 10 for the first faculty meeting. Once you get the job, we'll do that one later on. All right. Let me go back to my share board and see what I've got here. Jennifer, make sure if this thing opens, tell me if you can see it. It's a PDF.
Okay.
Sometimes these things. There we go. Can you see it?
Absolutely.
All right. Job. Work, go, job readiness skills online. Successful workplace attitudes and behavior. These are things that employers are looking for and that you should be looking for, especially when hiring. The best way to get rid of a bad employee is don't hire them to begin with. And these are the kinds of things that you're trying to figure out. These are also things that you need to assess the level of readiness or maturity in the people that you are hiring. In many cases, the folks that we're hiring in our business now are beginners just out of college, and many of them are lateral entry. They're not actually education majors, and many of them have been helicopter parented and still live at home or have not really cut the apron strings. So here are some things that you should be looking for in them, and these are things you have to be looking for in yourself to make sure that your employer knows that you're going to be there, that you're going to be focused, you're going to do your very best, you accept guidance and direction, that you're flexible, you stay calm, you look after yourself, you're ready to go, you're honest, you have a positive work attitude. These are things that you have to get across to a potential employer, and also the things that you're looking for as a potential employer. Service skills, and we are in a service business. Service equals success. Service essentials: do more than expected, extra effort, handling difficult situations, effective communication, dealing with customers, professionalism, satisfying the customer needs, and key point for good service. This is a good one. Even though this is just kind of a generic, I always like this because it kind of summarizes it all together, because we are a service industry. Probably the biggest test that you're going to have as a school administrator is dealing with parents and the general public who walk in, and you need service skills. And so this is a good one that goes with that. And then the last thing I want to share with you tonight. Another PDF. All right. Creating effective leaders through situational leadership approach. And it has some really good stuff in here about situational leadership and how it's implemented. I really like this. It's a really good primer on situational leadership and about job readiness and those kinds of things. But what I really like about this, if I can get there. Okay. Are these questions? We're kind of finishing up our chapters in our reading on situational leadership. So here are the answers to the questions. Member of your team are unable to solve problems for themselves. In the past, you've normally left them alone as a group. Performance and interpersonal relationships have been good as a leader. What would you do? Involve the team and together engage in problem solving. Lead the team to work it out. Act quickly and firmly, correct and redirect. Encourage the group to work on problem and be supportive. If they're already unable to solve the problem, then they're going to need more telling. So involve the team together and engage in problem solving. That means you need to get them together, and to do that. As a leader, you notice a group of followers operating extremely well on a given task. They get along together and deliver the best. You want to ensure this continues. Reduce your leadership and let the followers take over as much as possible. Okay. Marlon, 2 months ago, he received Employee of the Month for his outstanding performance. In what stage is he? He has sufficient knowledge and skill to work by himself. Which leadership behavior would suit Marlon best? Let him do his job and be there when he needs help. And there's a few more of these that you can go in and answer, but kind of take this quiz yourself. This is a good one to review. I won't go through all these and bore you tonight, but you'll figure out what the answers to these are. This is a good final exam kind of thing on situational leadership. The only thing that I wanted to say about situational leadership preaches the notion that you change your leadership style according to the maturity of the follower, and you regulate different levels of task and relationship behaviors. And we've talked about what those are: task, behaviors, and relationship. Really, in the modern schoolhouse, we're looking more for the transformational leader who understands situational leadership, but goes beyond situational to transformational, which is high task, high relationship for everybody, regardless of their maturity level. Now, the kind of task and kind of relationship will be determined by their readiness level. But the notion here is we can't do like we did in the business 30 years ago were beginners. We didn't have very high expectations of outcomes or tasks. We just supported them emotionally, making the transition into the world of work. Now we still want to support them emotionally, making the transfer into the world of work, but we also have to expect high tasks, that they actually get test scores out of their kids. We can't give them a year or two or three to kind of get up and running like we could at one time. We have to have high task and high relationship. There was also a time when we had people who were beyond 20 years of experience, just let them go to the room and close the door. Problem with that is technology changes so much and so rapidly. Those people, if we don't build a relationship and hold them accountable task-wise, they'll just go to the room and close the door and do it like they did 20 years ago. And part of the problem with that is they will use the technology that they used 20 years ago, which is none, and they'll teach the same standard course of study that they did 20 years ago that we no longer use. I'll tell the story. When I first started teaching in high school, a lot of my colleagues were World War II veterans who had been teaching 30 years. And in the physical and mathematical sciences and chemistry and biology in the science department, they had laminated notes that they had been using their entire career. They had a hard time. Many of them retired as the basic education plan was passed in 1984, and they had to move to the standard course of study that shortly thereafter. For those of you who don't know, the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, which was replaced by Common Core or whatever the version of Common Core we have now, it's not been around forever. It only came about after 1984 with the passing of the Basic Ed Plan. It was only fully implemented in North Carolina by 1989. But that was the first time in North Carolina's history that there'd ever been a standardized state curriculum that said, you must teach this. Prior to then, you just taught what you thought you ought to teach or what you were taught in high school or college. And those folks had a hard time transitioning to that. That is a function of age, and that happens to every generation. So the notion that we can just let our mature teachers go to the room and do what they want to do, no, we need to have high task expectations of them too. And we need to give them emotional support, maybe as much as young teachers, in making that transition to a new curriculum and the use of technology. So those are situational leadership still applies. There are good lessons there on how to apply task and relationship behaviors, but in modern schooling, we have to have high task and high relationship for everybody. I will do a better job, hopefully, later on in covering the interviewing part. I wanted just to set up the maturity, the readiness stuff for you tonight from Hershey and Blanchard and Keelty. Those folks who wrote all this stuff, it's a little dry, but it's important things. But hopefully what you'll remember from tonight's session is this is what I'm looking for when I'm looking for employees, but I'm also looking for these things in myself when I'm a potential employee. When I'm looking to interview for an administrative job, these things are the things that I need to be careful, because that's what they're looking for. They read the same stuff that I've covered. And again, I will cover interviewing more in depth in terms of the questions to be expected in the different types of interviews. As you know, there are some districts are doing an applicant pool interview where you do Perceiver, like Strength Finder, the book that we've got. It's the same group, Gallup group. They have a set of questions. Sometimes you do scenarios. Those will be coming up pretty soon. That Principals in Basket. Those are scenarios where they give you situations and you have to figure your way out of it. There's group interview questions when you sit down with a group interview, like when you have a parent and the teachers and principals, those kind. And then there's also the principal interview, the last interview I have there. Those are 4 separate distinct types of interviews, and I have the questions for those. We'll go over those a little bit later on. Everybody, as I said, is pretty much up to where they need to be with their turn-ins. We have 2 that have completed. I'm very pleased with that. Jennifer, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to add tonight?
Just in terms of, I don't know, it's a question that does apply, I guess, right now, maybe, to my current situation. But in Will, I told you that jobs will be posted in the administrative department in July. They're not, as far as I can tell. I've been trying to gauge how much movement's going to take place in the administration and how many may open. It doesn't seem like there's going to be maybe one or two, if that, for sure. And there may not be even those. So just kind of professionally, I have noticed and been looking outside the county, but my desire is to work in this county. So do I need to focus on this county first, then go out?
Yes, I think so. Who's your superintendent now?
Mark Bird.
He was at the middle school. I'm trying to remember the name of the intern that I had with him. I had a cohort from Wilkes County. I taught them at the Statesville campus, and Mark was the middle school principal at the time. And so my point in saying that is I know when Steve Laws was the superintendent there, he was from outside of the district. And I know that, Marty Hemrick, when he was superintendent, he was from inside the district, but he had worked outside the district.
Oh, yeah.
I know currently you have a Wilkes County person who's only ever worked in Wilkes County.
Yeah.
And so my suspicion is that you would have a leg up being from Wilkes County there. That he's looking for Wilkes County people only, or that would be the thing. Now, when you're looking outside of the county, I said that to say this: when you're looking outside, you got to look at that same thing in the counties where you're going to. I mean, more than likely in Ashe or Watauga, they're only looking for people inside. You're probably going to have to come down the flatlands to a little more urban area for them to be looking outside of their district.
Okay.
You'd probably have to be willing to come as far as Hickory or maybe Statesville, or the other way, you might have to go to Boone or, down to McDowell or somewhere. I mean, you need to do some research on those districts. I mean, I know the superintendent in Ashe, he's not from Ashe. He's actually from Iredell. He's from Statesville. He was principal at West Iredell before he became the superintendent in Ashe.
Okay.
He would be open to having somebody from outside because he's from outside. So that would not exclude you from working there. But you kind of got to figure out who's looking for people inside and who's looking for people outside. You don't want to get involved in a process where in the end that they're not going to hire you, that they're just using you for window dressing to have enough candidates to make the field look full. That being the bridesmaid every time is bad for your career.
Yeah.
Instead of the bride, you need to be serious. You need to be a serious candidate wherever you go. That doesn't mean you're going to get every job, but you can't be the people they just trot out, to show that, hey, we interviewed more than one person, but then we hired our cousin anyway, kind of thing.
Yeah. You
got to be careful of that. And you got to be careful in your district. If they do a general application type interview system, where they don't advertise the school, it's just, an assistant principal opening. It's not going to be specific to a school. It's going to be a general interview, and it's going to be like a perceiver interview. And that's what I'm going to cover with you a little bit later on. They're just going to try to do a personality and try to whittle the field down by doing personality perceiver to make sure you're the right kind of person, and then they'll move to probably a group interview. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about being prepared by looking at all the district numbers, that's once you get, what particular school that you're going to be going to interview from. But in preparation for those general, what I call cattle call interviews, make sure that, that you go over the perceiver, the strength finder stuff, and know, the traits that they're looking for in those interviews. Dependability, discipline, achiever, ego drive, all the stuff that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. for those kinds. But again, if you live up in Hay, and you don't want to travel all the way down to North Wilkesboro, then don't interview for a job in North Wilkesboro. Don't just get in there. And again, the more times that they see you, the more times they figure there's something wrong with you, the reason you didn't get hired before. Make sure that you're a serious applicant no matter where you go.
Okay.
Wilkes is a pretty big county. If you're willing to work anywhere in the county and don't care what kind of students you work with, and everything's fine. But if you, again, that's when you got to be honest with yourself. What kind of places do you want to work? It's not one of those things I can work anywhere, but what do you want to do? What is your burning desire? Because one of the things that we're trying to do when we hire people is find people who have a passion for what they do and where they do it.
Mm-hmm.
I had so many good people in that cohort a few years back, and that's some. I had one to get a job before we even got through. And she had a passion for what she did and where she did it. She was from the community.
Mm-hmm.
She was from up in Hayes, so she wanted to be there. They knew she wanted to be there. They knew that she was passionate about the business, but also about the community. And that's important. You don't have to be just born right there, but you got to have some passion. I mean, no sane person wants to work in middle school, but you've got to, if it's a middle school job and that's what you want to do, then you've got to convince them that nothing would make you happier than to work with seventh graders.
That's actually what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. I did that,
I love middle school.
Even though I was a senior high person, after I did my internship back in the old days, you did it for a year. After I was an AP in high school for years, an intern, my first real job was a middle school AP. I hated every day of it, but they didn't know it.
Yeah.
And and my first principal job was a 7th and 8th grade middle school. Right after that, and then I moved into elementary school. I had an elementary and a junior high. I moved counties, and then became a junior high, then senior high principal. It took me all those years to get back to senior high, where I was most comfortable. But I had a lot of fun along the way. But the idea was, it's not about my career, but the idea was I was fully committed, whatever to whatever and wherever, and was able to convince people that I would be fully committed. So that's a big part of the interviewing process, is that they don't worry at night that you're going to show up the next day, or that you're going to flake out or have a nervous breakdown or slap somebody or do something crazy.
Yeah.
Really and truly, that once they turn the keys over to you, that they feel comfortable and they can rest at night, that you're going to handle it and take care of it, and that you want to be there. That's nothing more that you would rather do. And if you can convince people of that, you can get a job. But if you're unsure, then they'll be even more unsure on the end. So look at the openings in Wilkes County. Make sure it's something you want to do. There may not be as many people applying for middle schools. I just remembered the intern that I had at the middle school was Michael Holloman. I remember that now. That's who was the intern when I met Mr. Bird. So it's been a while. I can't believe I remembered that. But, yeah. So again, the point of that story is again, know the people that you're interviewing with or for, and kind of figure out what they're looking for and what matters to them. So I think you'll be fine in Wilkes County. Outside of Wilkes County, you need to try to find out the same things. Probably be okay to look at Ash, but some of the other counties locally, not so much.
Okay.
They'll be looking for their people. All right, I see our time is up for the evening. I will see you all next week, and have a good week. Keep on keeping on your work. Make sure you get your portfolios done. All right, Jennifer, have a good week.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.